What is going on, Shadow Walkers? The past few episodes have been intense, man. We've talked about a lot of world history, dude. So today I was thinking we could bring it in. We can get a little closer. We could be a little more intimate, and we could just talk about one specific thing. And so in that thing today, we're going to talk about one of history's great inventors. This is part one of what's going to be an ongoing series that we're going to call Weird Science. It's my creation, Weird Science. Is it real? From my heart and from my hand, why does no one understand my intentions? So our subject of today is Nikola Tesla, one of history's most enigmatic men, whose vision for a better world left him broken, destitute, and alone. Besides all the bright lights, all the awards that he got, there are shadows cast behind Tesla as far as the eye can see. And today we're going to look at a lot of those shadows. So welcome back to another episode of Bright Lights and Scary Shadows. This week is all about one of my all-time favorite people to have ever walked this earth. This dude's life was fucking crazy. It was a wild ride of ups and downs, triumphs, failures, all that shit. There is no name in the world that is more highly symbolized by lights itself. Tesla is the father of the modern world, and just like the bolts of inspiration that lit his way, those same bolts of lightning illuminate his name in the blackness of space. He was a troubled genius that led a life of solitude right up until his very death. Tesla was not only a man out of time, but a man running on borrowed time. With his plans to give free energy to the world, his race ultimately would be a race against capitalism, not really time. And capitalism would end up winning out in the end. But in order to understand Tesla and his life, we need to really understand him as a person first and foremost, right? So let's get into it. Let's get our learn on about Tesla, right? The great Tesla was born in Croatia during a crazy thunderstorm on the 10th of July in 1856. The storm was so bad that the midwife freaked out and quit in the middle of it. And she's saying shit like, he's going to be a child of darkness. This is a bad omen, and she's wigging the fuck out. And Tesla's mother was like, yo, shut the fuck up, bitch. Get over here. He's going to be a good kid. He's going to be a child of light. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, oh, shit, all right. And she jumped back in. And that's how Tesla came into this world, in a crazy thunderstorm, which is nuts. So right out of the gate, his life was thrown into two separate lights, one of him being a curse and one of him being a blessing. And I can only imagine like how they were feeling about this birth, since it's 1800 Serbia and Nikola's father's an Eastern Orthodox priest. Milutin Tesla, his father, was a devout practitioner of the faith. Not much of an outside-of-the-box thinker in the end, but a good man nonetheless, right? Nikola's mother, though, Duka, she was a creative powerhouse. Her father and her father before him her father and his father before him were both inventors, and it was clear that Nico got all of his inventiveness from her. Duca was well known for creating household appliances from scratch, such as mechanical egg beaters and shit, and she was very, very smart. Nikola would draw so much inspiration from his mother in that sense, that he would end up being someone that always wanted to figure out how things work and make things simpler, make things easier, make life better. That was what he grew up on. They lived on a small farm, right? And Nico was the fourth of 5 children. He had 3 sisters and 1 older brother. Sadly, though, his older brother Dane would die after being thrown from his horse. And this would have a massive effect on Tesla. When they were young, they also had a cat named Macaque. And I know it's just Serbian for cat, but I can't help but snicker at it. It was when he was petting Macaque that he first felt those special tingles. And by special tingles, I mean static electricity, baby. And that started him on the path of electricity. From there, he would start to try and break down all kinds of shit. He figured out how to make a water wheel in the nearby creek. That's what really got him thinking. From that point, as a small fucking child in his little Yugoslavian Oshkosh bagoshes, he began his dream of harnessing the power of Niagara Falls. Like, mad young. Can you understand that? Like, that's crazy to me. To be so young and to have that's like your dream. You're gonna go power Niagara Falls. Like, fucking dope. I love Tesla. Love him, love him, love him. A little while later, he progresses in his thoughts, right? And now he's trying to make propellers. He made a propeller with 4 blades, right? And he caught a bunch of June bugs like RDJ and Sherlock Holmes, just without all the drug use and shit like that, right? So he takes all these June bugs and he glues them to the blades of the propellers. And when the June bugs would move, the propeller would spin. Now, his aunt was visiting at the same time with her husband and his son, and the kid loved to eat bugs for some reason. And the kid comes over, he sees Nikola's invention, and he just starts plucking the bugs off one by one and eating them right in front of young Nico, right? And Nikola's like, holy shit, he's mortified, vows to never use bugs again. Now, back in episode 1, there was a part that I had cut out about the evolution of flight. And in it, there was stories about dudes that would jump off of shit with umbrellas and wings, and much to their own chagrin, right? Because they would hit the fucking ground and boomba. And I'm sitting there thinking about how stupid some of these people must be, like how crazy must you be to think you can jump off of something with an umbrella and that's gonna work for you? Then here I am reading about Tesla, and this dude was doing the same shit as a kid, right? Granted, he was a kid when he was doing it, though. He tied a propeller that he had made to his chest with like a little small motor, and then he grabbed his mother's umbrella, right? And then when a strong gust of wind came, he got the propeller spinning, and he fucking jumped off of the garage, and or barn, my bad, and fucking plummets, bro, bang, right to the ground, knocks himself out, fucks his leg up. His mother would end up finding him 1 or 2 hours later afterwards and carried him back, still unconscious, and he would have to recover from that for a little while. Now, that wouldn't be the last time that he would almost die. When Nikola was a kid, he got into all kinds of shit, man. He got swept off a waterfall, almost died. Tried to swim under a raft, almost died. Then he fell headfirst into a vat of boiling milk, and you guessed it, right? Fucking boom, almost died. Imagine being this dude's parents, right? We had a close call with our daughter, and let me tell you, that shit was horrifying. And here's this little asshole with the common sense of a fucking dodo bird. I can only imagine the shit that he put his parents through. After little Nico finished elementary school, though, he went to go live with his aunt in old war horse's buggy and son while he attended high school. Tesla fucking crushed high school and got hooked on physics. Hooked on physics worked for me. Now, he did so good that he ended up finishing a year early, and his physics teacher wrote Militon to tell him how impressed he was by Tesla. And his physics teacher wrote his father, Militon, to tell him how impressed he was with Nikola. I believe he said Tesla was a star of the first degree. And when Nico finished high school, he wanted fuck all to do with his aunt's house. But his father didn't want him to come home. And he kept telling him, like, yo, no, don't come home. But young Nico, fucking super defiant, right? He goes home anyway. And almost immediately, dude, he catches cholera. And again almost dies, right? And now, up until this point, Militant, his father, was forcing Nico into priesthood. But now, with young Nico close to death, Militant makes a deal with his son. He's like, son, listen, please, you gotta fight. If you beat this, you can go to engineering school, I promise. Now, after 9 months of being on the verge of death, Nikola finally gets better. And then almost immediately, right, the military come to grab all the men of qualifying age for service. Tesla wanted fuck all to do with that shit. So he grabbed a bunch of books and some hunting equipment and ran off into the woods. That's right, dude. Tesla is a fucking draft dodger. After about a year on the run, he came home and his father sent him right away to go to Austrian Polytechnic School in Graz. And now this is where Tesla's obsession with AC power would begin. And he was a beast in his first year, right? Highest grades, never missed a single lecture, and he ended up getting in this huge debate with his professor over the need for commutators on a motor. Let's see if I can explain this to you so you can understand what the fuck these things are. I'll do my best, right? So they were arguing on whether or not a motor needed commutators. And now the way a DC motor works is that it's powered by a ring on the shaft, and then the ring on the shaft passes the power on to the motor, and that causes the motor to spin, right? So the commutator sits on the end, and then a metal brush rests on top of the commutator, right? Now, as these old timey motors were activated and the shaft would spin, the brush would launch sparks off of the commutators, and that was what Tesla had a problem with. And that's what he believed that there was a better solution to. And he believed in this so much that he ended up getting kicked out of school because of it. Basically, what he was envisioning were brushless motors, which are the motors that are in just about everything today. And then after that, right, he would attempt to enroll in philosophy school in Prague. However, though, he never studied Greek, and so that alone was enough to get denied admission, but he didn't get there in time either. So, one way or another, it was a bust for him. But he was undeterred. He stayed on as an auditor, and he attended every lecture and did everything that every other student did, but he wasn't able to get credits for it. And then after that, he moved to Hungary, where he got a job for Budapest Telephone Exchange. Tesla was the kind of guy that would get in where he fit in, you know what I mean? And when he got to the Budapest telephone service in Hungary, it was still under construction, right? So he just seen a bunch of shit that still had to be done, and he just jumped in and started doing the shit. And then once the site was fully up and running, he got promoted to chief engineer. And he would be there for a while, and he would do a bunch of work for them and make a whole bunch of new things for the Budapest company. And after that, he decided that he wanted to go to Paris. So him and his friend end up almost immediately getting jobs in Paris, working for the Continental Edison Lighting Company in France. And while in Paris, dude, Tesla busted his hump like the hunchback of Notre Dame. Sanctuary, sanctuary, sanctuary. Tesla, after doing all he could in Paris, felt like he wasn't getting anywhere, right? So he decides to pack up all the shit again, and he heads for the States. And once he gets to New York, he goes straight to Edison, and he gets hired on the spot. Now, he and Edison never ended up really seeing eye to eye, right? So Nico would work for him for a little while, and then he would finally part ways with him and then try to start out on his own. He had a failed venture, and then he would meet a couple of lawyers that wanted to invest in him. The two guys that he met were a gentleman by the name of Brown and a gentleman by the name of Peck. So his firm was Brown and Pecker. And he split everything with these guys 50-50 in exchange for funding. He took the investment money and opened his lab on 89 Liberty Street, like right the fuck away. And this was where he perfected the AC motor. Later on that year, the Brown Pecker would end up selling this design to Westinghouse, who was looking to break into the energy game. Westinghouse would hire Tesla to personally supervise everything too. And part of the deal was for $250 per horsepower per motor to be paid out to Tesla, setting him up for fucking life. And I was trying to find an actual number here, but all I could find was that it rounded off to about a fuck ton. And Tesla stayed there for about a year before returning home to make sure everything went as planned, right? So upon returning to New York in the middle of the War of the Currents, which was the battle between him and Edison over direct current and alternating current, he would move to 175 Grand Street. And this is where the Tesla coil came into life, right? And it's also where he would begin his work on high-frequency devices, wireless transmission, and electromagnetic radiation. He would also move into the Astor House after fucking terrorizing all of the hotels around New York with his experiments. If you watch Archer, you know the Astor House. It's the house that Cheryl or Cristal or whatever the fuck her name is lived in. Oh shit, dude. Poor Woodhouse, man. They never went back to figure out what the fuck happened to Woodhouse, right? Didn't he, get trapped under the submarine or something like that? I haven't watched the show in, forever, but that's the last thing I remember about fucking Woodhouse, dude. Tesla actually beat out the inventor of X-rays at this lab by accident, too. He beat him out by 2 weeks, and instead of debating the invention, he actually allowed the dude whose name was Röntgen, to have it. As a congratulations, Tesla took an X-ray of his own hand and sent it to Röntgen. Now, Tesla was on everybody's heels, or at least it would seem, right? If he wasn't working on it directly, he was messing around with things that he would end up discovering shit, accidentally. Oh shit, and this is the lab that he also figured out how to light up a vacuum tube with wireless technology. And that shit would light a fire under his ass, you know? However, though, the War of the Currents would take a huge turn right here, and it would spawn Tesla to move his lab again, and this time to South Street. Sadly, not a lot is known about this lab, other than it's where some of his greatest ideas were born, and it's also where he perfected the Tesla coil. In 1891, Westinghouse was hired to install Tesla's AC generators on a river out in Colorado, and this was known as the Ames Hydroelectric Power Plant. And this put Tesla that much closer to realizing his childhood dreams of harnessing the power of Niagara Falls. The following month, after the Ames power plant went up, he donned the old stars and stripes and became an American citizen. And then shortly after becoming an American citizen, he would move to Hotel Gerlach. It was a new hotel at the time, and it had electric lighting and an elevator and a grand fucking ballroom, perfect for entertaining potential funders. This was a necessity of Tesla's work, though. You know, it wasn't necessarily of a social or personal nature as some would claim that it was. Now, the next big step for Tesla here was the 1893 World Fair in Chicago. Westinghouse outbid Edison to power the fair, and Tesla built 3 insane generators. Just to give you an idea of how insane these generators were, they had a higher output of all of Chicago, which at the time was still using DC power. Westinghouse and Tesla were like Ben and Matt in Good Will Hunting. You know what I'm saying? They fucking came over with the number like, bam, fucking, you like apples? And now, something I didn't know about the World's Fair is that it was a celebration of Columbus's discovering of the New World. Is that like a theme or something? I didn't look it up. But is that like an annual thing? I don't know. So the way it was worded was that this is what it's about. And I was like, holy shit, because I never knew that. But I am going to look that up for our recap episode. And man, dude, yo, this fair was lit as fuck, dude. Young Nico broke out all the goodies. Look up the egg of Columbus that he made for the fair. He also had a bunch of his other inventions on display too. And the one that fucked everybody's head up was the whole lighting up of the vacuum tube. But he had these spheres made for the fair, and he had them all around the room, right? And then he lights up the coils, and fucking the orbs just light the fuck up, and everybody was like, get the fuck out of here. Like, just, dude, mind fucking blown, right? And people are like passing them around. And for that day, at that moment, dude, he inspired so much fucking awe and magic that it's amazing. You know, look at the pictures and shit of the 1893 World Fair in Chicago. Like, try to put yourself in the shoes of the people that were attending that and seeing that. You know, first of all, this thing was 3 times brighter than their entire fucking city. You know, that's crazy, dude. Nikola was not fucking around, especially when it came to proving that his idea was the better idea for electricity. The fair was a huge win for Tesla in the War of the Currents too. Hey, you're fighting a current war between Tesla and God. Who wins? Trick question. Tesla is God. Ha. And then right before Halloween, that very, very year, Tesla would get contracted to power Niagara Falls with his AC fucking generators. Boomba, Tesla for the fucking win. Up top, right? Anybody? No? It's just me here, that's right. All right. That would officially knock Edison's ass off the top spot, and Tesla would win the War of the Currents. More importantly, though, Tesla realized his childhood dream of harnessing the power of Niagara Falls. Sadly, though, his famed lab would burn to the ground, leaving him heartbroken. And this was where he had come up with some of his best ideas. After the floor had given out, all of his inventions just came crashing down and were absolutely destroyed. And nothing was insured either, leaving Tesla financially stricken as well. A short while after that, though, he would get back on his feet in Greenwich Village, and Niagara Falls would end up going online. After that, he comes up with this radio-controlled boat named the Automaton, right? And it was the first practical use that he had made of his wireless technology. This would end up being the base technology for guided missiles as well. And before you Karens out there start getting all fucking clinchy and ready to fucking chastise the military-industrial complex and shit, he himself tried to sell this idea to the government for guided torpedoes. Old Nico wasn't above making some money off of fucking, splashing some enemies for some cash, As long as it got him to his end game, dude, Tesla didn't give a fuck. Around the end of the 1800s, Nico met with an investor by the name of John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Oh, and his name was John Jacob Astor. Colonel John Jacob Astor, to be precise. And Nico must have really impressed old Colonel Astor because he gave him 130 fucking K. And Astor also linked him up with one of his buddies out in Colorado Springs. And this guy owned a power plant. And that dude was like, dude, fuck yeah, man, come on out here. I will give you all the electricity that you need. Fucking whatever you want, man. And Tesla's ears perked up and was like, all the power. And he was like, all the power. He's like, I can do anything. You can do anything. And Tesla was like, fuck yeah, baby. And he packed up his shit and fucking ran off to Pikes Peak, right? And this is where he started to come up with his designs for the Wardenclyffe Tower. It was said that when Pikes Peak was operating, people would have spikes coming from their feet as they walked around, you know. Butterflies would have a bioluminescent glow to them as they flew, and a number of other things would happen. People would be able to see and hear Tesla's workshop at Pikes Peak for miles. After running it a few times, though, Tesla really wanted to see what the fuck this thing could do, you know? So he had his assistants crank that shit right up to 11, and he went outside to watch what would happen. Now, his workshop at Pikes Peak had a whole removable roof, and it had this giant steel pole with a huge copper ball on the top, right? And when he lifted it up into the air and turned it on, a bunch of fucking massive lightning bolts would start to shoot off of it, right? Now, Tesla's outside watching the lightning, and it goes from like 10 to 25, 50, 100, 150 feet into the sky, and it's getting bigger and bigger, you know? And then the sound was deafening, you know? It's like you're basically standing directly in the heart of a thunderstorm. And finally, the machine reaches its peak, and it begins to level off, and all of a sudden, the fucking power just cuts down, right? Tesla is fucking furious, runs in the shop. What the fuck is going on? And the assistants are like, whoa, 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 we had nothing to do with that shit. All the power's cut off, you know? So Tesla calls the power company, right? And he's like, dude, what the fuck? Turn the power back on. And they're like, excuse me, sir. You just melted half of our fucking plant, and it's going to be a cold fucking day in hell when you get power from us again. And with that, that was the end of Pikes Peak. You know, Tesla figured out what he needed to learn, though, and he decided to go back to New York and begin to grab funding and shit like that for his Wardenclyffe Tower. So when he gets back to New York, we land in 1901. Tesla was hungry for funding for the Wardenclyffe Tower, you know, and so he woos J.P. Morgan with all kinds of things that he'll be able to do with the tower, and he'll be able to make so much money off of it if he invests in it. And now, around this time, telecommunications was a big market and it was burgeoning, and JP was dying to get in on it, you know? In the same way that Westinghouse had made millions with Tesla, that's what JP was trying to do. And so Tesla makes a deal with JP for 51% on all of his current, past, and future patents. Tesla bet the fucking house on Wardenclyffe, and all Morgan gave him was $150,000, right? Now, keep in mind that Tesla was keeping his true intentions hidden the whole time, or at least hiding everything that the tower could actually do, you know? And so the story goes that he needed more money for the tower, and he was having a hard time finding funding anywhere else, you know? So with no other options, he goes to JP and he asks JP for more money. Now, him and JP get into it, and Tesla ends up telling him about the free power, right? And JP immediately perks up, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, like, free power, like, wait a minute, you're going to be transmitting power? And he's like, yeah, we'll be able to transmit power all across the world. And then Morgan's like, well, where do we put the meters? And Tesla's like, nah, there's no meters, it's free power. And JP loses his fucking mind, and he pulls all the funding and shuts the whole fucking thing down. The whole thing was a public nightmare. You know, this would stop Tesla from truly being able to harness Niagara Falls, and it would truly be the end of his adulthood dream to give power to the world. The story goes that he lit Wardenclyffe up once before shutting the facility down, right? And supposedly it freaked everybody the fuck out. I mean, could you imagine all of a sudden seeing massive lightning bolts fucking shooting up all around you, all the way up into the sky, and the noise that comes with it? Fucking crackles and booms and all kinds of wild fucking shit. And then all of a sudden it just stops. You know, from the end of the world to serene peace, you know, in 3 minutes. Supposedly it was so crazy that they could see it way the fuck out in Connecticut too, which was like miles and miles away. Sadly though, after that, the whole thing would get shut down. And but you gotta look at what the fuck he was trying to do there, right? That's such a wild thing that he was attempting to do, and who knows, what the fuck would have happened if he actually got to put his tower into full usage. And that would be the brightest his star would shine, unfortunately. From here on out, he was never going to get funding for Wardenclyffe, especially now that people knew what he was trying to do, and all the things in his life would change here as well. He was still a man of great recognition, but he was never able to recover from signing over so much to JP. He would go on to win the Nobel Prize, or at least be nominated alongside of Edison, and he told them to fuck off. And he also ended up receiving the Edison Medal for scientific excellence. He graced the cover of Time magazine as well at the age of 75, and he became an honorable everything fucking anywhere right up until he died in 1943 at the age of 86. Now, the dude had a whirlwind life, and this is basically just an abridged story of his life in the public eye. Tesla gave so much to the world, and he only asked for the means to be able to give to the world, but it didn't really work out for him in the long run. Let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll go over some of the darker parts of Tesla's story, as well as some of his other creations that he came up with. But really quick, let's hear from today's fake sponsors, and when we get back, we'll get into it, alright? Hang tight. Yeah, come on down to Pimp Daddy J's Technological Emporium, bitches and things. We got all your technological needs. We got TVs, bitches, DVD players, more bitches, and the best camcorders to catch all the action live for the television screens. Also, come by and check out our private viewing rooms. $25. Bitches and things. And remember, no refunds. Bitch, I swear to God, if you get up to my face. Now, to really understand what made Tesla the way that he is, we got to go back to when he was just a boy, right? Tesla would be given the power of visualization by his father during lessons when he had him focus on things mentally. Then, when his brother Dane died, it triggered other visions. So now one day when Dane was practicing his skills, Tesla accidentally spooked the horse and it threw Dane off. Dane was their superstar, and when Dane fell off the horse, he fell and he smacks his head and dies instantly on the floor, and he dies right in front of young Nico. Whatever truly happened, Tesla would never say. However, he would blame himself for it until the day that he himself would die. I can only imagine how he felt. He was already an unnatural boy to the world around him and doing things that other normal children didn't do, And while everybody would blame Tesla, I think it had more to do with the horse itself being spooked by wolves not long before this had happened. I think young Nico just came running around and that shit freaked the horse out, and that caused him to rear up and throw Dane off. But whatever the case is, it fucked young Nico up, who had a photographic memory, and he developed PTSD from the incident and was reliving the scene over and over in perfect fucking clarity. Tesla said this about his struggle with the matter. A vivid picture would thrust itself before my eyes and persist despite my best efforts to banish it. To free myself from the torment, I tried to concentrate on something else, anything else, by continuously conjuring up new images. I was oppressed by these thoughts of pain and life and death and religious fear, and swayed by superstitious beliefs, and lived in a constant dread of the spirit of evil, ghosts, and other unholy monsters. Poor fucking kid, no? After the funeral, Tesla hid away in his father's study and he found a book about having willpower, self-control, and discipline. Ideals that he would quickly accept due to his grief. The book was Son of Abba, if anybody wants to check it out. After reading it, Tesla said, I began to discipline myself. Had I a sweet cake or a juicy apple I was dying to eat, I would give it to another boy. It pained me, but I also felt satisfied. Had I some difficult task before me which was exhausting, I would attack it over and over until it was complete. And that shit right there, set Tesla up for his life. Those two things. Dane's death, his guilt, and then finding the book, and the book changing the way that he perceived how he should behave to the outside world. You can see how Dane's passing had significantly affected not only his mind, but his very core being, Tesla would use his visions, though, to escape and help him imagine up all kinds of wild ideas. And that's how he was able to see the brushless motor, and his professor wasn't. After being kicked out of school, though, Tesla didn't take it very well. And this part actually really fucking surprised me, right? Because Tesla indeed had an aversion to some sinful ways and salacious delights, right? Young Nico, angry and defeated, took to hanging around gambling parlors and smoking and drinking and shit. He would actually battle all these vices and beat them out in the end, but not right now. Right now, Tesla was fighting with his mind. Now, after Tesla left Austria, he decided to go to Slovenia, where he became a draftsman. And just like before, though, he spent all of his time at the wrong table, and after racking up a bunch of fucking debts, he got reported for not having a visa, and then he got sent home. Prior to this, though, his father was like really worried about him, and he went to go see him, and he was like, Nikola, please come home. And young Nico was like, nah, dude, fucking kick rocks, I'm good. And but now he had no choice. And then when he gets home, Mr. Tesla caught an illness like almost immediately and dies. And when Nico was going through his things, he found a bunch of letters from his old teachers saying how gifted young Nico was. They were also worried about his lack of rest and tendency to overwork himself. And 100%, man, they were right. Nico put himself in the hospital numerous times for having breakdowns from exhaustion. Nikola would end up teaching at his old high school for a little while, and then his uncles would pay for him to go and study in Prague. That's how he ended up in Prague. The poor kid just had bad luck too, because when he got there, man, he didn't get there in time and whatever, but granted, he made the most out of it. And then that brings him to Budapest, where he had his first breakdown. And then after that breakdown, he was on a walk. And during the walk is when he had the vision that allowed him to figure out AC polyphase electricity. Now, from Budapest, he went to Paris to get fucked over by Edison. And I mean, if you're gonna get broke back bunker busted, it might as well be in the fucking city of romance, no? No, seriously though, he put in a shit ton of work for the Continental Edison Lighting Company, and they were supposed to pay him out twice, and they fucked him over both times. And that's what spurred him to leave and come to America. Now, his uncles again helped him out with some cash, right? And he packs up everything, right? And he leaves for Lady Liberty's embrace. Now, the fucked up part here is that there was almost a mutiny on the damn ship. Young Nico was almost thrown overboard, and to make matters worse, he got jacked for almost all of his money and all of his luggage. By the time he actually made it to New York, he had pennies left to his name, a notebook, and a small bag left with the rest of his shit. But you gotta hand it to him though, right? He went straight to Edison and he got fucking hired on the spot. And now this is where that whole thing with him and Edison starts. It's more like Edison's thing with Tesla more than Tesla's thing with Edison, because Tesla never really did anything to hurt Edison, at least directly, and with malice, that is. Tesla was just trying to get his shit going. Edison did not like that shit at all. But at one point, Edison had publicly called Tesla a damn good man. Young Nico was given his all, and he had replaced over 24 of Edison's devices with completely new ones, and still, Edison would not give Tesla the time of day. He even went as far to call Tesla's ideas stupid and wasteful. So now finally, Edison gives Tesla this impossible task. He tells young Nico that if he can make the DC dynamos better, that he would give him 50 fucking large. Tesla hit that task like John Wick trying to get fucking married. And when he returned to Edison with a design in hand, Edison and his friends all fucking laughed in Tesla's face. They were making fun of him for being a fucking immigrant and that he didn't understand American culture and all this and that. And fucking Tesla was like, yo, you gotta be kidding me. And furthermore, Edison didn't even have that much money at the fucking time. So Tesla has enough. He fucking quits on the spot. Word is that Edison tried to hire him back, like immediately with a raise, but Tesla was like, nah, fuck you, like that's it, I'm done. I mean, he looked up to Edison, and all he really wanted to do was help, but all Edison could do was take advantage of Nico and take shit from him. But the following year, he would be approached by investors, and the Tesla Electric Light Company was born. And this would be another Rochambeau for Nico. He rolled everything into this company. He signed over all of his patents for stocks and all of that, right? But they too didn't give a shit about Tesla's fucking AC designs. He designed a lighting system for them, and then right after that, they basically forced him out of the fucking company and changed the name, and that shit left him fucked over, broke. He called it one of his hardest blows that he ever received, right? Betrayed yet again by his faith and trust in others, he would undergo a winter of suffering in 1886. It was so bad he had to work as a ditch digger, and he spent most of the fucking winter crying, and he had massive headaches. Poor guy. It was after that period that he met Brown and Peck, and then Brown and Peck would sell his designs to Westinghouse, and then everything would change for him from there, And this brings us up to about 1890, and we're right in the middle of the War of the Currents, Edison would make it his life's mission to defame and debase Nikola Tesla. It was at the height of the current wars that Edison became most vicious. Not only did he take out ad space and talk a whole bunch of fucking shit and spread a ton of fucking rumors about Tesla, but he also started to kill things. And the fucked up part here too is that prior to this, Edison was like against capital punishment and all that. But when it came to Tesla, all bets were fucking off, right? Now, once Tesla's system started to gain ground, he thought that since Tesla focused on high voltage power transmission, that surely all that power was so much more deadly, you know? And so he started killing shit with alternating current. And it started off with him being just a sociopath, and then he made the fucking leap to a murderer like fucking real quick. He started off by just killing a stray dog, and then he began buying dogs for 25 cents a piece to test new ways to kill them. And then he moved up to cattle, and then horses, and then poor Topsy. You know, they'll say, autopsy at my autopsy. He didn't stop there either. Bloodlust is as bloodlust does, man. Edison finally convinced the government into letting him kill a fucking person with AC power. Some dude had just killed his mistress with an axe, and they figured, hey, fuck it, this is perfect, right? And they fried the fuck out of that dude. And that was a massive blow dealt to Westinghouse and Tesla. Westinghouse would end up losing a bunch of money, and Tesla would move his lab again, and now this time over to the Grand Street lab. Now, the deal with Westinghouse wasn't just for that upfront money, you know? That was trivial. The real money was in those royalties, you know? And they were supposed to set Tesla up for life, remember? Now, this is two parts fucked. One is because of Tesla's stubbornness, and the other is because Westinghouse took advantage of his friend, right? Now, basically, the newer system created at Ames Hydro Plant meant that the original generators Tesla built for Westinghouse needed to be stepped up. Tesla refused, or he kept putting it off, one or the other, right? So regardless, that money from the royalties was still supposed to be his because he had already built the other motors for Westinghouse. Now, that's right up until Westinghouse approaches him with some bullshit woe is me story about, oh, he's financially struggling and he needs the money from the royalties that Tesla's contractually obligated to fucking receive. Now, Nico, feeling for his poor friend, thinking, oh, well, I don't need this money as much as Westinghouse does, thinking about his book, The Son of Abba, agrees to give up his royalties. And this would leave him in ruin for his later years. You know, meanwhile, Westinghouse made fucking millions and died extremely wealthy. Now, after he gave up his royalties, his life began to fall apart. Those against him were vicious, you know, and Edison was spreading a whole bunch of rumors, and amongst them was one that he was gay. And this led to a lot of disinterest in him, and it would lead to a lot of his lectures drying up moving forward. Even the evil villains in movies and cartoons were all made to show Tesla as a bad guy with nefarious intentions. You know, I mean, think about it for a second, right? Think about all the old cartoons, all the old movies, and how they showed the evil genius in his lab. And there's all these sparks and maniacal laughter and monsters and craziness, you know? That was supposed to be Tesla. That was them demonizing Tesla. You know, that was how far they went to ruin him. From movies all the way down to cartoons, from adults all the way to the kids. And I'm convinced that it was Edison that had the lab burnt down on Fifth Ave as well. Tesla was devastated by it. And reading about how the fire started, it sounds like some bullshit, you know? It sounds more like some, hi, I'm a low-life criminal hired by Edison to ruin you as you've ruined him. And if you don't have insurance, this is gonna hurt. The lengths that people went to ruin this man are truly maddening. It's like fucking heartbreaking to see how vicious they were to him. And all of it was because he wanted to change the world and make it a better place. And I can't think of a man that was more misunderstood than Tesla. They said he wanted fame and money because he was hosting parties and always asking for cash, you know, when in reality, he had massive social problems and really just did that shit for funding for things like, you know, free fucking energy for the world. You know, and he viewed women as a distraction, and he felt like he ruined his chances with the one when he was young. Plus, he felt he couldn't give a woman the life that she deserved. You know, he has this whole quote where he calls marriage a distraction, and then it was something that he ended up regretting when he was old. He said, I fear I may have misunderstood the whole thing. You know, but no, instead he's a fucking fag and shit because they didn't understand him and they wanted to make other people not like him. You know, like that's crazy fucked up. Now, before, right, we went over Tesla's automaton, remember? And it was the radio-controlled bolt, wireless technology. There was a man in Italy by the name of Elmo Macaroni. Wait, no, no, that's wrong. Guglielmo Maricon. No, shit. That's like, Guglielmo Marconi. Guglielmo Marconi. There we go. It's easier to say when you say it with the Italian accent. You know what I mean? Guglielmo Marconi. And I'm probably still fucking it up. Now, Marconi would end up using the ideas of a number of scientists, including Tesla, right? And this pissed Tesla off. Now, this part about Tesla made me laugh a little bit, because he was known for taking from others, He didn't invent the dynamo, he modified it. He didn't invent the transformer, he modified it, and so on, And not to take away from any of his achievements, but he was just kind of shitty in that area, like he would take from others without giving recognition all the time. And on top of that, his assistants would make a bunch of improvements to his designs to which he never gave any credit for. I don't think I came across one instance that I was reading about where I seen him give credit to anybody else. Unless you were like Mark Twain. Other than that, dude, you're on your fucking own. No props from Tesla. Now, Tesla got into a bunch of lawsuits with Marconi. And when Marconi received the Nobel Prize before him, he was fucking ripshit. That was a big thing. That was one of the other big reasons why he didn't take the Nobel Peace Prize. He was like, first, you're going to give it to Marconi before me, and then you're going to nominate me with fucking this piece of shit Edison that's ruined my fucking life? Fuck that shit, right? Yeah, I feel him on that one, dude. Fuck you and your fucking medals, But whatever, where was I? Now, when it came to Marconi, Tesla was looking for a broad stroke, and Marconi was looking to fill a current need. If Tesla had focused more on smaller gains, he might have had larger success, But Marconi was only working on trying to send wireless transmissions. He wasn't working on anything else. And Tesla was working on a variety of things. His mind was all over the fucking place. And the Wardenclyffe Towers were to beam information and power to the whole world. Marconi only saw the immediate future, while Tesla saw deep, deep, deep down the road. However, it was Marconi that made Tesla's future happen, unfortunately. For Tesla, that is. Nico was so fucking far ahead of his time that he was seeing way, way down the road, and he already knew what it was going to be like. Now, check out what Tesla actually said about the future in this interview. He said, "It will soon be possible to call anyone in the world. It will only be necessary to carry a small, inexpensive instrument no bigger than a watch, which will enable its bearer to hear for thousands of miles. One may listen to speeches or send songs to the uttermost parts of the world." He said that shit in 1909. To me, that's proof of his ability to either visualize or the power of his visions to see far beyond what a normal person could see. And in terms of his visions, his own words about the topic were pretty fucking crazy, He said he could go to far off places in his visions. He said that he had people in his visions that he loved and they loved him in return. This dude had full-on relationships with people in his visions, or wherever they were. And I want to believe that a big part of that was astral planing. And it's one of those things that connects him to Maria Orsic of the Vril Society from episode 1. They were both in communication with people in their visions. They were both lifelong bachelors. They were both vegetarians. They were both closely watched by the clandestine organizations of their countries, the Gestapo and the CIA. Tesla even created his own spaceship, right? And we'll get to that as well. And I know I've already kind of gotten a little sidetracked here a little. Now, his final blow came from J.P. Morgan, and as we went over in the first half, when Nico and the 369ers got back from Colorado, he wrote this wicked over-the-top article for Century Magazine. And in it, he claimed that he could tap the sun's energy with its antenna, that it was possible to control the fucking weather with electrical energy. He predicted that machines would make war impossible, and he also proposed a global system of wireless communication, exactly as it is today. Fucking wild. And it was that article that caught the attention of J.P. Morgan. Now, Morgan and Tesla were already friends, as I said, but Tesla's idea of the worldwide communication and stock market reports and all of this shit got JP harder than the statue of David's dick. Like we said earlier, though, Tesla only got $150K for all that he gave up. The project would cost nowhere near $150,000, and it was nowhere near enough for what Tesla was trying to accomplish. The thing here about old Nico was that he was a fucking liar, and at just about every turn he did the opposite or hid his true meanings of his work. And this often led to some hurt feelings and failures due to it. And finally, though, Nico needed more money to complete Wardenclyffe, and that's when he goes to see JP and asks for more money. Now, Marconi had just beat Tesla to the proverbial punch by transmitting the letter S across the ocean in Morse code. And his system was cheap as fuck. And now here's Tesla building these massive towers that cost tons of money that need a power plant. And here comes old Nico talking about how he needs money and all this and that. And not only is he asking for more money, but he fucks up and tells him that his true plan is to give power to the world. JP was fucking furious that he lied to him, that he made him waste a bunch of fucking money on something that he didn't agree to. Nobody was gonna fund him after that shit. Wardenclyffe was fucking wild too. Let's take a quick look at this design. It was placed on a cliff at Long Island Sound. The tower reached 187 feet in the air, and on top of Tesla's Death Tower was a 55-ton sphere made of steel. Right? Now, beneath the tower was a shaft that spanned 120 feet beneath the ground. And then there were 16 iron pipes that were driven another 300 fucking feet into the ground from there. He said that the device needed to grip the earth in order for it to work. And I know that there are wild differences in between the two, but it sounds a lot like a nuclear reactor in a way, right? In essence, it was, because his plan was to turn the entire planet into a giant reactor. He said it has to have a grip so that the whole of this world can quiver. Fucking heavy shit, Nico, man. Chill, dog. But that was when the stock market crashed. And at that time, too, material prices went right through the fucking roof. And that mixed with everybody being aware of Tesla's ideas and Marconi already being able to do something similar, much, much cheaper, it would be the death rattle for Tesla's work. In 1912, Westinghouse Co. would call in some final debts, and one of the last laboratories would end up being repossessed to cover them. Now, years before this happened, though, Westinghouse tried to make amends with Tesla. And I think he felt bad about Nico being flat broke and shit, and since it was basically his fucking fault for talking him out of the royalties, you know what I mean? And maybe he just viewed it as a blemish to have Tesla broken like that, since they had worked so closely together, Whatever the case may be, right? Westinghouse started paying Tesla out monthly right up until he died in 1914. Tesla would end up filing for bankruptcy 2 years later. In the hearings, he told the Supreme Court that he had nothing. He was fucking broke, like there was nothing he could do. And then the New York World newspaper ran a fucking crazy article about him the next day, talking a bunch of hot shit about him. And that would fuck him over too. And then the next year was when Tesla would receive the biggest insult that he could get in the form of the most prestigious award, which was the Edison Award. And he reluctantly accepted it. They had to talk him into doing it because he kept declining to go. And then during the introduction, Tesla fucking takes off. And then they found him later on in the park feeding pigeons. They had to talk him back into going and giving his acceptance speech. Tesla loved pigeons, and he had this one in particular, and it had a special place in his heart. It was a pure white pigeon, right? And it had these light gray tipped wings, and it was a female pigeon that he had this special bond with. And he was quoted as saying that all he had to do was think of her, and she would appear. One night in 1922, while Tesla was in his hotel room, the bird came flying through the window. And Tesla said that he knew something was wrong because this was highly unusual. And he said that a light bolted out of her eyes, more intense than any light he had ever produced, and then she died in his hands. Tesla said that it was at that moment that he knew his life's work was over, which is crazy, right? Nikola would bounce around from hotel to hotel after this, leaving behind huge debts at each one. In 1931, Time magazine honored Tesla by placing him on their cover. And by that point, though, Tesla was practically alone. Everybody that he knew was dead. Even Edison would pass away in 31. And then a few years later, World War II was building up. And in 1934, Tesla designed his peace ray. It was the media that called it a death ray. However, though, Tesla claimed it would be a weapon to end all wars, right? A few years later, World War II was building up. And then in 1934, Tesla designed his peace ray. It was the press that called it a death ray. He never called it a death ray. He called it a peace ray. And Tesla claimed that it would be a weapon to end all wars. And in his naivete, he gave it up to every major country, or at least tried to sell it to every major country. What he created was basically a particle beam. It was something that would take the world 50 plus years to figure out how to make without Tesla. For instance, particle beams were supposed to be the basis for Reagan's Strategic Defensive Initiative, or Star Wars Initiative, back in the 80s. And now from here, things start to get a little crazier in the story, right? Remember back in episode 1, we went over Hitler's spy network? Well, in 1935, a good friend of Tesla's and a Nazi spokesman wrote this article about Tesla's machine to end all wars, right? And he undoubtedly passed on Tesla's work to the Duquesne spy network. Now, some of Tesla's most grand designs would be put into play by the SS, or at least it would seem. Instruments similar to the particle beam were found on the Foo Fighters, and even then, the Foo Fighters themselves were perhaps based on Tesla's designs too, or at least Otis Carr's. It was one of them. The author of the article was G.S. Varick. After the war, he was sentenced to fucking life in prison for whatever he was doing for the Nazis, right? Now, however, Tesla, like I said before, Tesla did try to sell his particle beam to multiple governments, to which they all turned him down, except for the Soviets, which is pretty interesting. Tesla would end up dying in 43, and after his death, all of his work would be seized by the FBI as a matter of national security. And this part pisses me off with people because everybody is up in arms on, like, why would they do that? Why would they do that? The fucking guy was, the guy was a genius. And, like, no, the guy was making fucking death rates and trying to sell the ideas to the Soviets and shit, The Duquesne spy network had already gotten their hands on a bunch of his shit before they broke it up, and the war was still raging on. As a governing body, I think it would be ridiculous to leave his work available to just any fucking Tom, Dick, and Harry that might want to go and grab it and sell it off to whoever, right? Like, of course Tesla's work is a matter of national security. Now, the way that Tesla died was ruled as no foul play, but a part of me feels like there was some more to the story, Like I said, like, his designs were already popping up in Nazi Germany. All of a sudden, there's this do not disturb sign on his door, and the maid just happens to ignore it for some reason, and behind it lie Nikola Tesla dead from a heart attack, and then conveniently, directly after that, his whole workshop gets fucking raided and they take all of his shit for God knows how long. It just sounds shady, right? It just sounds like something that they would do. It fits the profile, so to speak, right? Like, whatever the fuck that profile might be. But it sounds shady. Fuck it, right? It does. It does, goddammit. Now, the FBI would end up releasing all of his work not that long ago, or what they say is all of it, but a lot of it is still heavily redacted and shit. And anything that they got out of it for whatever they needed to get out of it, they did not release back out to the world. And that's even, like, God knows. Like, nobody knows what was in those trunks. Nobody knows what was in those files. And sadly, I don't think we'll ever know. Maybe our children's children will know when all that information gets released. But as far as us, like, we're fucked. This is all speculative for us, right? All right, now we've been here for a little while, right? So let's wrap this up with some more of the outlandish stuff, and then we can get on with our day, all right? So Tesla's reemergence into the public view is very much by design. Or should I say the reason that he was gone from the public view was very much by design. The powers that be have not wanted any interest in Tesla at all due to the work that they were conducting on his notes. The crazy part to me here is that Tesla's work was so far ahead of his time that it seems alien to people. Furthermore, we get so blinded by the mystery that we want to attribute so much to aliens, when in fact most of the things in the skies and so on are very much man-made. Lasers were thought up by Tesla before we were even actually able to make them. And this was in his notes and so much more. And the fact that we're so quick to point to alien intervention is insulting to us as a race of people. And yeah, I know. And I know he had his visions and all of that. But, part of me wants to just think that he was just astral planing. Like, it wasn't something so otherworldly. Like, it was something that we as humans are actually capable of doing. Just for him, with his photographic memory, he could remember it all in a way that we can't, like that many people that claim to astral plane or whatever can't. I'm more likely to lean that way than to look at him as being contacted by aliens or all that. And I know that he did receive signals when he was at Pike's Peak, but that was just an echo effect, or at least that's what it seems like. Multiple other people have seen it, and it's been recorded a lot, but people try to make this whole huge, like, weird story about it, and there really isn't much of a story there, or at least enough of one to constitute him getting messages from aliens, And I don't think he ever really said that aliens told him shit. He said that he has visions, and in his visions, he sees things. He never said, aliens. Although he did feel like he was communicating with something else, with some other part of the world. the universe, whatever, you know? Whatever form that took, we don't know. But I just hate how we always want to fucking throw everything to aliens. Like anytime somebody does something fucking amazing, regardless of even if maybe they were of a higher intelligence and maybe aliens, if they do exist, did take an interest in them. But does that still necessarily mean that they were guided by those aliens? Or if they were just inspired by the aliens, does that still mean guided? What constitutes guided? But I'm way off track right now. I just went off on a rant on that one. And even if it was some form of autism that allowed him to see this, I mean, it was still real shit. He was still able to make real shit, from that. And Tesla started having these visions when he was a kid. And these visions allowed him to transport and do all these other things. And I find it absolutely fascinating. And it really pisses me off that people are so quick to try to claim autism over something that they can't understand. And now that's not me putting the word to it. That's me reading the word being put to his name multiple times. And it's aggravating. It's like, oh, no, it was aliens, it was aliens. Oh, no, no, he was a fag, no, no, he was autistic. Like, there's always this crazy other side to him instead of, people being willing to just accept him for being a fascinating fucking individual. So now on to Tesla's IFO, or Identified Flying Object, right? Now, in the early 1900s, after Tesla figured out his ideas for free energy and put in his patents for the Wardenclyffe Tower, he also applied for a patent on a flying saucer. Now, this flying saucer patent is fucking gone. It doesn't show up anywhere, and the only patent that comes up was in the form of a VTOL, and we're going to get to it in a second. Now, every account of this states that his flying saucer had no engine, and it was going to solely draw power from the Wardenclyffe Towers, right? And every account of this just states that he applied for the patent and nothing ever happened from it. Now, I didn't see it anywhere. I tried to find it. You could find some drawings and shit like that, but that's all you'll find. The IFO relied on Wardenclyffe Tower, and that's where it was going to get all of its power. So it didn't need an engine. It didn't need any of that shit. Now, when Wardenclyffe never happened, his IFO was definitely never going to happen. Or, was it? As we spoke about before with the spy network and all that was going on, a German newspaper published an interview with George Klein, a famous engineer and aircraft expert, describing the construction and testing of flying saucers that were carried out between 1941 and 1945. So 1941 happens, they start testing with UFOs, we get freaked out, fucking kill Tesla, take all of his shit, and we're still way behind the fucking gun on this one, you know what I mean? They finished up in 45, we haven't even touched the science yet. Now, the patent that Tesla did get approved was approved in 1928, and it was patent number 1655144, and it was for a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And it was both a helicopter and airplane. Now, the thing to look at here is I think that this was where Tesla tried to sneak in his propulsion system. And this is where a lot of the speculation comes that he did in fact figure out how to make a flying saucer. The craft was powered by what was called a space drive, or an anti-electromagnetic field propulsion system. If you were to take that engine and place that engine in an IFO, then perhaps Klein was in fact onto something. No one can tell me that the Germans didn't have all of this research copied, because their Honeyboo ship that we covered in EP1 looks almost exactly like Tesla's design, right? And they were also developing a bunch of other shit like lasers and shit like that Tesla had discovered. When Tesla died and they seized his estate, that was when the first Foo Fighter encounters happened as well, And so I'm super fucking inclined to think that there's a connection there. At that point, the risk to have Tesla alive and to have his work in anybody else's hands far outgraded the need to keep an 86-year-old man alive in the government's eyes, And part of me hates myself for this a little bit, but I'm like, fuck, man. He dug his grave on that one, like what the fuck was this dude doing trying to sell the shit to the Soviets? Like, where did he think like this was going to go over well? Because it didn't at all. And a huge part of me can understand why they did what they did, if they did that, or at the very least, I totally 100% understand and support the fact that they went and took his fucking notes. It sucks that they had to do it because now we lose out. We lose out on whatever else might have actually been in there, whatever greatness might have actually been able to be given to the world, because whatever was there, they were going to poach and cherry pick from, and we're never going to fucking see it. Tesla also had an apprentice by the name of Otis T. Carr. And he didn't start off as an apprentice. I think that they had just met and they shared a lot of the same ideas about energy and a lot of the same passion about physics and science. And their relationship develops. And Tesla says to Otis, the people of my time do not accept me and they do not accept my ideas. But maybe the people of your time will. And he begins to give all of his information to Otis T. Carr. And now there's two stories that you can find about Otis T. Carr. And one of the most commonly held ones is pushed by the establishment. And that one is that he was a con man and a charlatan. Yet the other side tells a story of someone that was able to figure out how to make a fucking spacecraft. Based off of Tesla's designs and tutelage that he received from Tesla him fucking self. Otis T. Carr actually even put in for a patent of the flying saucer, and it had a levitation device as the engine, and it was denied for the patent because of that. And they said that if he removed the levitation device and grounded it as a vehicle, that they would give him a patent for an amusement device. Now, he just went ahead and did what the fuck he was going to do anyway. Once he announced to the world that he was finally ready to mass manufacture his designs, the fucking feds rushed his shit, took the entire company away from him, and they told everybody that they were no longer allowed to communicate with each other. And those are two crazy different stories. You know what I mean? Like, one is like, oh no, he was just stealing people's money. You know what I mean? If he was just taking people's money, the feds wouldn't have rolled in and took every single thing fucking Waco, Texas style. You know what I mean? But that's what the fuck they did. They didn't go in there guns blazing shit like that, can we? Well, they went in and they fucking, they gutted his shit, took everything. They accused Carr of trying to overthrow the monetary system. And if you listen to the people that worked for Carr, you get such a different story than that, And this is the second time since I started the show that I came across the government claiming that the creation of flying saucers would topple the monetary system. And this very much makes me believe that they are a reality. I no longer see UFOs as some far-off vehicles. I no longer see a lot of shit as far-off creations, but rather as very, very, very terrestrial. We've been tricked a lot into looking up instead of looking here, but I digress, right? If you want to learn about Otis T. Carr and shit like that, check out the OTC X1, and that was Carr's spaceship, the OTC X1. That's what he came up with. And it's exactly what and then look up the Vril 1, VRIL-1. That was the German ship. Look at the OTC X1, and then look at the German ship. They're almost exactly the fucking same. They're almost exactly the same. Like, I don't need to make up a conspiracy story about that shit. I can just tell you the fucking facts. Otis T. Carr made this thing, the OTC X1, and the German motherfuckers made the Vril 1. Look that shit up. You can see for yourself, but you don't need to take my word for it. And it's nuts. It's fucking nuts that this shit is out there and it's right in front of our faces, and it's still seen as like just so crazy when it's not. And clearly Tesla had no bounds to his genius, right? And it shows. I mean, he gave us radio, TV, alternating current, the Tesla coil, fluorescent lighting, neon lighting, remote control devices, robotics, x-rays, radar, microwaves, bladeless turbines, fucking, and so on and so on and so on. And out of that, though, comes this one thing. And this one thing is very, very real. And it is very, very controversial. And it is going to be something that we're going to get into a lot more in another episode. But I can't not acknowledge it. And that is HAARP. And HAARP is based all off of Tesla's high frequency shit. And he even said it when he was talking about the Wardenclyffe towers, that we can control the weather and stuff like that with electricity. Tesla also learned how to create earthquakes with high frequency, something that HAARP is accused of being able to do. And if you look at a lot of the wild shit that Tesla was doing with high frequency and how he almost toppled buildings and shorted things out and all of this stuff, a lot of that is happening at HARP as well. Just on a scale way beyond any of us can even imagine. I know I can't. I could speculate. I'm sure all of us could, but none of us truly know what is actually going on at HARP. But it is very, very real. Anybody can look up their base in Alaska. Anybody can look at that shit. Anybody can read the stories about what people think is going on, but none of us actually do. However, we can look at Tesla and what he thought that shit could do, and it's based off of his work. So, I mean, 1+1 = 2, right? For a lot of this shit. And in this case, there's a lot of connections between some of the chaotic designs that Tesla came up with and HARP. Now, one can only imagine what the world would be like if we actually embraced Tesla's genius and supported his efforts. Instead, we may very well be destroyed by the same ideas from the same man that lifted us up in the very beginning. And it was a man that wanted nothing than to end all suffering, really. Yeah, sure, he dabbled in selling weapons and shit like that, but I mean, that was all the end game of getting him to where he needed to get. Tesla's life couldn't more embody the whole essence of this fucking show if it tried. A life famously held in great reference, with little of his past or struggles truly told. And when I talk about his past and struggles, I mean about what the American society, what American people, what we did to him as a country, because we kind of fucked with him pretty hard. And all he was trying to do was just make things better. He spent so much time fighting legal battles over his patents that took up a huge chunk of his time as well. And in the same way that it happened to the Wright brothers, they got capitalism ended up fucking creativity, and maybe a huge part of it is what spurned it as well, because they were trying to get rich off of it. But a lot of these people that do this, they'd be more than happy with the fame and the recognition of and their legend going down in history. Really, they'd be just as happy with that. But in the system that we have, in the system that all these men fell into, it fucked them, and many more as well. But I digress. Again. I can't sit here and start talking about shit like that. Now, instead of Tesla going down as one of the richest men in the world, he went down as somebody that's seen most of his priceless work sold at pennies on the fucking dollar in the long run. And Tesla gave so much and he received so little in the long run. And it was fucking so rough to read his story and see how much, he actually went through, and to see all the shit that actually happened to him. When I started this whole episode, I came in with my tinfoil hat looking for something outrageous, And instead, what I found was a story about an extremely gifted man that was tormented by his traumatic childhood. A man who could see beyond the conventional, whose imagination and reality was one and the same. I did leave out the Black Knight satellite, and I only briefly touched on the messages that he received while in Colorado Springs, but I'm still looking into a lot more of that, and I didn't want to continue on with that speculation of him being, guided by aliens. I feel like that's a big disservice to him. And so I went with what I went with. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a hell of a story for me. It was a hell of a walk for me. I enjoyed the fuck out of it. I learned so much more about Tesla and about who he actually was. And I'm happier for it. And I hope you are too. But if there's anything here that you want to talk about, please get a hold of me on Facebook or Twitter, at WantSomeSpook on Facebook or at WantSomeSpook on Twitter. You can get at me on Instagram as well at brightlights_scary_shadows. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. But as usual, though, thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Don't forget to share it with your friends, too. And if you could, throw me a like on all these different platforms, wherever you guys are listening. And next week is just a light episode. Not a big, deep episode. We're just going to go over, we're going to recap all we've talked about so far. That's going to be our quarterly update. So every quarter until we get $1. And then we're going to go from there. I don't know what that means yet, but we're going to figure it out, right? Thank you guys so much. And this has been another episode of Bright Lights and Scary Shadows.